I didn't even look up when the HR calendar invite appeared. Organizational review, mandatory. For a second, my stomach tightened hard enough to steal my breath. Then I smiled and whispered, "Not me." Men like me didn't disappear overnight. Not after 27 years. Not after fixing disasters no one wanted to remember. I leaned back in my chair, 63 years old, badge still warm on my chest, and thought, they don't get rid of men like me. They wait for us to decide we're tired. My name is Thomas Reed. I've been in this building longer than some executives upstairs have owned suits. I remember when decisions were made in hallways, not spreadsheets. I wasn't loud. I wasn't ambitious in the way the company learned to reward. But when something broke, people came to me. That used to mean security. Or maybe it only meant convenience. Across the open floor, I saw Mark Holloway watching me. Same age. Same thinning hair. Once, we started at the same desk row, joked about retirement plans we never believed would come. Now he was head of operations. My supervisor. The man who signed reports I no longer received copies of. His eyes slid away when I caught him looking. No smile. Just assessment. I told myself it was stress. Mark was always tense. Always climbing. I walked past his glass office and a memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. 15 years ago, there'd been a list. Quiet. Names of people who trusted this place. Mark had pushed it toward me and said, "This is how you prove you still belong." I pushed it back. I told him I wouldn't sign. I remember thinking I'd won something that day. Integrity. Respect. Mark signed it himself. A month later, he was promoted. I stayed put. And for years, I told myself that was a choice, not fear. Around noon, Eleanor Brooks stopped by my desk. CO. 55. Her presence always slowed the room without demanding it. "Thomas," she said, "how's the Phoenix rollout holding?" I told her the truth. That it was stable. That it was quiet. That quiet meant working. She nodded, relief crossing her face for just a moment. We'd shared years of projects and losses. Both widowed. Both pretending experience was immunity. With her, I never felt old. I felt useful. As she walked away, Mark appeared in my doorway. "You still have her trust," he said lightly. Too lightly. "Some people earn that." I shrugged. "We all do our jobs." He leaned in just enough to lower his voice. "Some of us do more than our jobs to stay alive here." Then, almost kindly, he added, "You stopped doing that a long time ago." The words landed heavier than he knew. That evening, I sat alone at my kitchen table, phone face down. I told myself I'd earned the right not to fight anymore. That dignity was enough. That good work spoke for itself. Then another thought crept in, unwelcome and honest. I hadn't fought because someone else always did it for me. And maybe I'd mistaken that for safety. The next morning, the original meeting vanished from my calendar. Replaced with another. One-on-one, Eleanor Brooks. My chest tightened. CEOs don't ask for privacy unless the decision is already made. I stood longer than usual in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, noticing the lines I used to ignore. I said it out loud, just to test the sound. "They think I'm too old." It didn't sound like a joke anymore. On the way to her office, I passed Mark in the corridor. He didn't look at me. He was smiling at his phone, unburdened, like a man already living in the next chapter. And in that moment, the truth settled in with painful clarity. The company hadn't suddenly changed. It had been changing quietly for years. And I had let silence convince me I was safe. I didn't sleep much after that morning. Not because of fear exactly, but because my mind kept replaying Mark's voice. "You stopped doing that a long time ago." I told myself it was just something bitter people say when they finally outrun you. Still, the words clung to me like smoke. By the time I walked into the office the next day, I already felt late to something I hadn't been invited to. The floor was quieter than usual. Too quiet. Conversation stopped when I passed. Not abruptly. No one wanted to look guilty, but just enough to notice. I told myself I was imagining it. I'd earned my place. 27 years doesn't vanish overnight. That was the lie I repeated while my badge beeped at the gate, still granting access, still pretending nothing had changed. Mark called a department check-in that afternoon. Short notice. Mandatory. He stood at the front of the glass conference room, hands folded, calm in a way that felt rehearsed. He spoke about alignment, and future-proofing, and difficult but necessary evaluations. No names. No accusations. Just language clean enough to hide blood. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to me, then past me, like I was already gone. Halfway through, he paused and said, "Some roles age better than others." A few people shifted in their chairs. No one looked at me. That was the first real hit. Not what he said, but how quickly everyone learned not to meet my eyes. After the meeting, I tried to catch up with him in the hallway. Old instincts. Talk it through. Clear the air. He stopped walking but didn't turn around. "It's not personal, Thomas," he said. "It's structural." I almost laughed. Structural. As if loyalty and years and decency were design flaws. When he finally faced me, his expression wasn't cruel. It was tired. "You taught me how this place works," he added. "You just refused to believe it." I went back to my desk and found that my access to 2 shared project folders was gone. No explanation. No warning. Just absence. A small thing. Almost invisible. That was Mark's gift. He never broke things loudly. He let them quietly disappear. Later that day, Eleanor passed my desk again. She slowed, just slightly. "We'll talk tomorrow," she said. It wasn't reassurance. It was a pause. The kind you put before bad news. I nodded, pretending steadiness, while my hands stayed clenched under the desk. For the first time, it occurred to me that whatever she was about to say, she'd already said it somewhere else. That night, I opened an old notebook I hadn't touched in years. Meeting notes. Handwritten diagrams. Names of people who'd once depended on me. Some were gone. Some retired. Some promoted past me. I realized I'd stopped writing in it right around the time Eleanor started quietly backing my decisions in executive meetings. I'd let someone else fight the battles I used to fight myself. The thought didn't make me angry. It made me ashamed. The next morning, Mark stopped by my desk without asking. "HR will probably reach out soon," he said casually. "Just so you're not surprised." I looked at him and saw something new behind his eyes, not triumph, not hatred, but relief. As if removing me finally proved something to himself. "You could have played the game," he said, almost gently. "You chose not to." "No," I answered before I could stop myself. "I chose people." He smiled thinly. "So did I. Just different ones." When he walked away, I understood something I hadn't before. Mark wasn't punishing me. He was correcting the past. Every list I hadn't signed. Every meeting Eleanor had ended in my favor. Every time integrity had beaten ambition. This was his balance sheet. By the time Eleanor's assistant confirmed our meeting for the following morning, I already knew how it would end. Not the details. Just the shape of it. Still, I straightened my tie. I reviewed my notes. I prepared arguments no one would ask for. Old habits die hard. That evening, as I shut down my computer, my badge hesitated for half a second longer than usual at the exit. Just a glitch. Probably nothing. But I stood there, waiting for the light to turn green, and felt something close to grief. Not for the job. For the man I'd been when I still believed respect was protection. I arrived early on purpose. Not to impress anyone, those days were gone, but because I needed a few quiet minutes to remember who I was before this building started deciding it could live without me. The lobby smelled the same: polished stone, burnt coffee, recycled air. Even the security guard gave me the same nod. Routine is a cruel thing when your life is about to be rewritten. Eleanor's assistant let me into the outer office and offered water I didn't touch. Through the closed door I could hear low voices, hers and someone else's, muffled, controlled. When the door opened, Mark stepped out first. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked prepared. Like a man who had already rehearsed the exact way my face would fall. "Thomas," he said, polite. Professional. The kind of politeness people use at funerals. Then he walked away without another word. As he passed, he brushed my shoulder lightly, barely a touch, easy to miss. But it felt like a signature. Eleanor stood in the doorway and held it wider. "Come in," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. There was something there I hadn't seen before, exhaustion maybe. Or anger she couldn't afford to show. Her office always felt too quiet for a place with so much power. The city skyline filled the windows like a painted backdrop. She motioned me to the chair across from her desk. I sat down carefully, as if my posture could keep my world from tipping. "I know what this is," I said before she could start. She didn't correct me. That was the first confirmation. "I've been hearing the language," I continued. "Future-proofing. Alignment. Necessary evaluations." The words tasted like metal. "Mark's been preparing the ground." Eleanor's jaw tightened at his name, but she said nothing. I tried one last time to be the old version of myself, the man who solved problems by staying calm. "If there are concerns about Phoenix, tell me. If there's a metric I missed, I'll fix it." "That's not what this is," she said quietly. There it was again. That clean sentence that can destroy a life without sounding cruel. She slid a folder across the desk. My name was printed on a label that looked too neat to carry something so ugly. I didn't open it. I didn't want to see my career reduced to bullet points. "I fought," she said. 2 words. Simple. Heavy. "I argued your numbers. Your record. The fact that your team trusts you." She paused, as if choosing how honest she was allowed to be. "But they're not reviewing work, Thomas. They're reviewing risk." "Risk," I repeated. She nodded once. "The board wants continuity with a new face." Their phrase. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, but I kept my voice level. "So, I'm a risk because I'm 63. Eleanor didn't answer right away. Not because she didn't understand, but because she understood too well. When she finally spoke, her voice dropped. "They don't say it like that. They never do." That was worse than agreement. It was admission. I leaned back, slow, controlled, as if moving too quickly might crack me. "They think I'm too old," I said. Her gaze held mine. And in that moment I saw the cost in her face. She wasn't a villain. She wasn't even weak. She was trapped inside a system that rewarded people like Mark and called men like me a liability. "What did Mark tell them?" I asked. Eleanor's eyes flicked away for the first time. "Enough." I let out a short breath that almost became a laugh. "He didn't just give them numbers. He gave them a story." Eleanor didn't deny it. I looked at the folder again. My hand stayed still. "You know what's funny?" I said, and my voice surprised me with how calm it was. "I always thought the game was about being useful, not being liked." Eleanor's expression tightened. "This isn't about likability. It is for Mark," I said. "It always has been." Her shoulders rose and fell slowly. "Thomas, I'm not allowed to talk about what he said. Or who he talked to." That told me everything. For a few seconds either of us spoke. The city beyond her windows kept moving as if nothing in my world was falling apart. Cars, people, light. Life for everyone else. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "I need you to understand something." I waited. "They're not doing this because you can't do the job," she said. Her voice sharpened, like she was pushing against the limits of her own role. "They're doing it because you won't do what Mark does. You won't cut corners. You won't bury people with policy. You won't smile while you take something from someone." I felt my throat tighten. That wasn't comfort. That was the cruelest compliment in the world. Eleanor continued, quieter now. And they can't control that. I stared at her. So decency is a risk. She didn't blink. In certain rooms, yes. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of years. Meetings. Late nights. Decisions she backed when it cost her political capital. Times I kept my mouth shut because I trusted her to speak for me. And suddenly the shame returned, the one Mark had poked at. I hadn't fought because I thought I didn't have to. I'd let respect feel like armor. I should have seen it, I said, more to myself than to her. I should have pushed back sooner. Eleanor's eyes softened. You shouldn't have had to. That line almost broke me. I forced myself to look at the folder again, then at her. What happens now? Her mouth opened, then closed. She was choosing words that wouldn't get her burned. There will be a severance package. Transitional support. You'll have access to your personal files for a limited time. Limited time. Even my memories were on a schedule. And Phoenix? I asked. Eleanor's gaze hardened. Mark will take it. Of course he would. He wouldn't just remove me. He'd wear my work like a suit. I stood slowly. My legs felt steady, which annoyed me. I wanted to shake. To show someone the damage. But men my age don't get the luxury of falling apart in a CEO's office. Eleanor stood too. Thomas. I held up a hand. Not rude. Just final. Don't. She froze. I couldn't let her soften it. Couldn't let myself believe there was a way back through kindness. If I walked out of that office with hope, I'd die a little every day waiting for someone to change their mind. I looked at her one last time. You did fight, I said. I know you did. Her eyes glistened, just barely. Then I turned toward the door. Eleanor followed me, silent. She walked me to the threshold like an escort to the edge of a cliff. Her hand touched the door lightly, as if she could hold it open forever if she chose. I stopped. I didn't step out yet. The hallway beyond looked normal. Bright lights, carpet, quiet footsteps. A world that didn't know I'd just been erased. I wanted to hear her say it wasn't true. I wanted her to say they were wrong. I wanted one sentence I could take home and replay when the nights got too long. Instead, she closed the door. And she didn't answer. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound so ordinary it should have meant nothing. But it followed me down the hallway like a verdict. I walked past the framed awards, past the glossy posters about values and integrity, and it all felt like a museum exhibit dedicated to a company that no longer existed. People moved around me with careful speed, eyes on screens, hands full of coffee, shoulders angled away as if grief were contagious. I kept my face steady. Men my age learn early, if you look wounded, the world feels entitled to finish the job. At the elevator bank, my phone vibrated. A calendar notification. Access window, personal files, 48 hours. It was so cold I almost laughed. 27 years condensed into a 2-day countdown. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then slid the phone back into my pocket like it had insulted me. The elevator doors opened. Mark was inside. Alone. Of course he was. He stood with his hands loosely clasped, tie perfect, expression neutral. There was no surprise in his face, only timing. I stepped in anyway. The doors closed. The air changed. For 3 floors we rode in silence, the numbers lighting up above us like a slow execution. Then Mark spoke without looking at me. You took it better than most. I kept my eyes forward. Most what? Most people who think decency buys them immunity, he said. The words came out even, almost gentle. I'm not mocking you. I'm observing. I felt heat in my chest, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing it. You planned this. Mark finally turned his head. His eyes were calm. No. I prepared for it. There's a difference. You removed my access before the meeting, I said. You didn't just prepare. You started erasing me. He nodded once, like I'd correctly answered a question. I protected the project. The project was fine, I said. That's not what I meant, he replied. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a quieter floor, executive support, legal, rooms with names instead of numbers. Mark didn't get out. He hit the door close button with a smooth tap that felt like a habit. The doors sealed again. You want the truth? He asked. You've always loved truth. I didn't answer. Mark leaned back slightly, as if he had all day. The board doesn't hate you. They don't think you're useless. They're afraid you still have a spine. And they don't know what to do with a man who won't bend. My throat tightened. Eleanor had said something like that. Hearing it from him made it dirty. You sold them a story, I said. What was it? That I'm slow? That I'm outdated? That I'm sentimental? Mark's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I didn't have to lie. I only had to frame. The word hit harder than an insult. He continued, I told them you're beloved. That your team would follow you anywhere. That you resist modern efficiencies. I told them you're the kind of person who makes others feel safe. He paused. And I told them safe is expensive. My hands curled into fists at my sides. So you made my character into a liability. I made it into math, he said. That's what they understand. The elevator stopped again. This time the doors opened onto the main level. People stepped in, 2 analysts talking about weekend plans, a young manager tapping out an email. Mark's face changed instantly, like a mask sliding into place. Friendly. Blank. Harmless. He nodded at them, then looked straight ahead as if we weren't in the middle of something vicious. That was his real talent. Not ambition. Performance. When the doors opened to the lobby, he stepped out first. I followed. The analysts peeled away toward the cafe. Mark slowed just enough for me to catch up. There's a severance meeting, he said. You'll be offered terms. Standard. His tone was casual, like he was telling me where the copier paper was. Then he added softly, but I can make it better. I stopped walking. Why? Mark turned, and for the first time there was something raw under the polish. Not kindness. Not regret. Hunger. Because I know how you're wired, he said. You're going to go home and tell yourself you lost because you were honorable. You'll make that your comfort. Don't. I stared at him. What do you want? He lowered his voice. A statement. A transition note to the team. Something clean. Something that says you support the direction. You endorse it. And if I don't? Mark didn't blink. Then the story becomes messier. People start asking questions. They start looking for someone to blame. And you know who they'll pick. It wasn't a threat with teeth. It was a threat with paperwork. The kind that ruins reputations while everyone keeps smiling. I felt my heart thud once hard. Not fear for my job was already gone. Fear for the only thing I had left, the way people remembered me. You're afraid of me, I said, surprising myself. Mark's eyes narrowed by a fraction. You're afraid that if I leave angry, they'll realize you needed me to look bad. I continued. You need me to walk out quietly so you can wear my work without guilt. Mark's jaw tightened. I don't feel guilt, he said, and I believed him. I feel tired of watching people like you get praised for being good while people like me do what's necessary and get blamed for it. There it was. The confession he'd never say in a meeting. He wasn't just punishing me. He was correcting the universe. And Eleanor? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it. Mark's eyes flickered. A tiny crack. Don't, he said. So that was the nerve. She never chose you, I said quietly, not as an attack but as a fact. And you're still trying to win by taking what she protected? Mark's face hardened. The mask snapped back into place. You don't know what she chose, he said, but his voice had changed. Less smooth. I nodded slowly. I know what I chose, I said. I chose not to become you. For a second, the lobby noise faded. All I could hear was my own breathing and the hum of the building that had been my second home. Mark looked at me as if he wanted to say something sharp, something that would cut. Instead, he stepped closer and spoke with eerie calm. Sign the note, Thomas. Leave like a professional. Be remembered as the good man. I could have argued. I could have shouted. I could have tried to burn the place down with the truth. But I saw it clearly then. A man like Mark feeds on reaction. A system like this eats noise and spits out nothing. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I did the one thing he couldn't use. I gave him nothing. I turned and walked toward the revolving doors. The cold air outside hit my face, clean and sharp, like waking up. Behind me, I heard Mark call my name once, more irritated than angry. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I stepped into the daylight with my hands empty and my spine intact, and for the first time since that HR invite, my silence wasn't surrender. It was control. The first morning after my badge stopped working, I woke up at the same time anyway. 5:30. Habit doesn't care that you've been cut loose. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of my life starting. No shower running in the next room. No rush of a commuter train. No calendar buzzing. Just the house settling and the quiet that used to feel like rest. Now it felt like proof. I made coffee out of muscle memory and sat at the kitchen table with my hands wrapped around the mug like it could keep me from drifting. The company had given me 2 days to download my personal files, as if a career was something you could pack into a folder and carry out without spilling. I didn't even log in. I couldn't stand the idea of begging a server for permission to remember my own work. For a week I told myself I was fine. That I'd earned this. That I'd finally get my mornings back. But the truth was uglier. Without the building, I didn't know where to put my worth. At 63, you don't fear being tired. You fear being unnecessary. On day 8, I went to the hardware store just to hear people. The clerk called me, sir, twice, polite and distant. I stared at shelves I didn't need and felt foolish, like a man pretending to have errands so he won't admit he's lonely. In the parking lot, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Do you have 10 minutes today? Same time you used to take lunch. I didn't answer right away. I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling something tighten in my chest that wasn't romance and wasn't anger. It was recognition. Like the world had finally spoken my name again. We met at a small diner off the highway, the kind with chipped mugs and sunlight that makes everything look honest. Eleanor arrived without an entourage, no assistant, no driver. She wore a simple coat and looked older than she had in the office, as if the building had been holding her up too. She sat across from me and for a moment neither of us spoke. I shouldn't be here, she said finally. I know, I replied. Her fingers traced the edge of her cup. They're watching me, she added, then stopped, as if that sentence tasted like defeat. I waited. I didn't want reassurance. I wanted truth. Eleanor looked up. Your silence saved you, she said. When you didn't sign Mark's note, the board expected a scene. A complaint. A call to legal. They wanted you loud so they could label you difficult. She paused. You left clean. And they hated that. I felt a dull satisfaction that didn't feel like victory. Mark offered to make it better if I endorsed the direction, I said. I know, she answered, and the way she said it told me she'd been tracking every move. I studied her face. Why did you really text me? Eleanor breathed in slowly, like she was stepping into cold water. Because I'm tired of losing to men like him, she said. And because I need you to understand what happened. My jaw tightened. I understand. I got old. Her gaze sharpened. No, she said firm. You got rare. The words landed hard. I looked away toward the window where trucks rolled past, ordinary life continuing like a lesson. They weren't afraid of your age, Eleanor continued. They were afraid of your standard. You make people look at themselves. Mark can't stand that. The board can't control that. She swallowed once. And I couldn't stop it without burning everything down. I let the silence sit. A younger man would have filled it with questions. At my age, you learn that the hardest truths don't need padding. What happened to Mark? I asked. Eleanor's mouth tightened. He got Phoenix, she said. He's in the chair he wanted. He's already telling people it was his strategy. I nodded. And the team? Your team is quiet, she said. They don't trust him. They're polite, but they're not loyal. I felt something cold in my stomach, pity, maybe, or just the recognition that ambition is a hungry thing. He'll squeeze them, I said. He already is, Eleanor replied. He's cutting small things first. Training. Support. The things that don't scream on paper. I stared at my hands. For years I'd believed the company rewarded the right behavior. Now I saw it rewarded the behavior that looked right on a spreadsheet. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. Thomas, she said quieter, I didn't come to apologize. I came to offer you a door that doesn't belong to them. I looked up. There's a subsidiary the board ignores, she said. A legacy portfolio they keep alive because it's profitable, but they don't understand it. They've been discussing selling it off. If they do, Mark wins. If they don't, it sits and decays. Her eyes held mine. I want to take it private. Build it into something smaller, cleaner. No politics. No performance. I didn't speak. Eleanor continued carefully. I can't do it while I'm CEO. Not openly. But I can set it up. I can fund it. I can step away when the timing is right. She paused, and the next words came out stripped of titles. I want you beside me when I do. It wasn't a romantic line. It was something rarer, an invitation into purpose. My throat tightened. Why me? I asked. You have 100 people who'd say yes. Eleanor's expression softened with a kind of exhaustion that felt familiar. Because they'd say yes for the wrong reasons, she said. Because you're the only person I've worked with who never tried to take from me. Not my position. Not my attention. Not my grief. She glanced down at her cup, then back up. And because when the door closed, you didn't beg. You didn't bargain. You just stood there. And I realized I'd spent years protecting a man who never asked to be protected. The diner hummed around us. Silverware. Low conversations. A family laughing in a booth. Life happening next to a moment that would change mine. I thought about Mark, how he chased a chair and ended up alone in it. I thought about the board, how they'd chosen control over character. I thought about the way my kitchen sounded at 5:30 now. You know what they'll say, I told Eleanor. They'll say you're sentimental. They'll say you're reckless. They'll say you're making a mistake. Eleanor's eyes didn't flinch. They already say it, she replied. Just quietly. I sat back. The old version of me would have rushed to reassure her, to promise loyalty, to make a plan. The new version, one born the day that door closed, understood something simple. Speaking too quickly is how you give people a handle to pull you around. Eleanor waited. Not pushing. Not pleading. That was the difference between her and the system. I looked at her for a long time. Then I did what I'd done in the lobby with Mark. I chose control. I chose meaning over performance. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just nodded once, small, steady, and let my silence do what words couldn't. It drew a line between the life that had been taken from me and the one I would build with my own hands. Eleanor exhaled as if she'd been holding her breath for months. She didn't smile. She didn't reach across the table. She just sat there, a woman who had finally stopped fighting in rooms that punished her for having a heart. When we stood to leave, she opened the diner door for me out of habit, then paused. The winter air hit us both, clean and sharp. Behind us, the bell above the diner door rang once, and it sounded nothing like an ending. It sounded like the start of a life that didn't need anyone's permission.